On this video, I will talk about a disconnection in barbering. I will show you a very simple technique which you will be able to use in your salons on your male clients. Pay attention on the over direction on the diagram and expanded shape of your disconnection, and pay attention on the section and pattern for the disconnection and the over direction being used. Before you start your haircut, make sure you always assess the hair growth patterns and the texture of the client's hair. Make sure you do it on dry hair, and then you will make your decision what kind of length you're going to create on that particular hair texture. As you see on this section and pattern, I separated the fringe and placed two large triangular sections on the top. Make sure that your section and pattern is very clean. It will be much easier to work with it. You will start your haircut from the side. First of all, you have to find the corner for the side. As you remember, if you're following me on the blog, we've been talking about the corners in classic barbering in the video with classic barbering technique. Then you take your first section from the top of the ear, exactly the same as you would do in classic barbering. As you already know that in classic barbering we're working with square shapes. So in this haircut you will create exactly the same square shape through this side. So you're taking your sections parallel to the previous and you're moving forward towards the front hairline, and you're using your over direction back to the previous. I will always stress your attention on the tension of your sections. Always make sure that your tension is even. Even tension will give you a very clean cutting line. Make sure you're building a good habit to work clean. Make sure you're taking clean sections, using even tension. Don't work messy. If you will work messy, you will spend much more time on your haircut. In the end, you will spend a lot of time to refine your haircut to make it look better. But if you work methodically, slowly, you're thinking what you're doing, you're taking your sections clean, then your haircut in the end will be immaculate. And your clients will notice your professionalism straight away. Your movements will show your professionalism. Once you've finished your shape through the side, comb your sections down and assess the shape visually. And now you're moving back to the corner. So you're taking your guide from the top of the ear. You're using exactly the same over direction. Working clean, take clean sections. Put even tension. And cut it from short to long. As you notice here, the top of the section is a little bit shorter than the bottom of the section. So your cutting angle is from short to long, so you're leaving a little bit more weight and length on the outline. And you're working with the same section in pattern up to the corner. You can see very clear here the cutting angle from short to long, that concave cutting angle. It's very important not to forget about your body position. The body position is very important. You're standing right opposite your shape, because if you think about it, you're creating a square shape. So you have to stand right opposite your shape, and you're pulling your sections towards you and using over direction back to the previous. So that's how you can control your square shape. If you will change your body position, you will move, for instance, slightly away from the shoulder, slightly back, or you will move slightly forward in front of the shoulder, you will increase your over direction, so you will automatically create a wrong shape. And now, very important part of the haircut is your cross-check. With your cross-check, you can find out, did you created a right shape, or did you made a mistakes with your over direction and your shape doesn't look square anymore. So you'll take your sections horizontally, pull sections towards you, again your body position right behind the shoulder, and you can see the geometry of your shape. So you're moving gradually from the hairline up to the internal shape, and you're pulling each section towards you and making sure that the shape is square. If you found out through cross-checking that your shape is not square, I would recommend you to repeat your technique, to go back to your technique, start from the top of the ear and cut it again, but just control your over direction better. If you will stick with that habit and you will be very strict to yourself, then you will find out even in a month's time your technique will improve, because only you yourself can improve your technique. Only you can be your own teacher, your own leader. If you will really control yourself, if you will really try to work more professional, to work more methodical. In haircutting techniques, it's all about three fundamental shapes: triangular, round, and square. And we have to understand and learn how to control hair as a building material and be able to build those three fundamental shapes by using hair as a building material. So in this particular video, we're working with square shape, square fundamental shape through the sides and through the back of the haircut. So we're working with very classic technique on the external shape, and then with our disconnection on the top, we will work with a little bit more advanced technique. So it will be a very nice combination of classic fundamental shape and the disconnection on the top. So as you can see on this side, we're doing exactly the same procedure, following exactly the same way of cutting, taking section from the top of the ear, using over direction back to the previous. Notice the cutting angle is from short to long, keeping the length and the weight on the outline. And first of all, moving towards the front with our section and pattern. And by using an even tension, over directing back to the previous section and cutting it square. Square cutting angle from short to long. And again, by using our guide from the top of the ear, moving towards the corner of the side, using exactly the same over direction. Try to really see and understand the geometry behind the shape. Try to imagine it, visualize it first. What shape you're creating and why you're creating this shape. Always ask your question, why are you doing this particular shape? Don't memorize technique blindly. Always ask yourself the questions. Always analyze what you're doing. And more you will start analyzing your techniques, more creative you become. It's a very good exercise. So make sure every time you're listening my video tutorials, try to get this message. Try to see the way I'm building the shape. Try to pay attention on every single detail. It will really improve your understanding of shapes. If you're still watching this video, I'm absolutely sure that you are the person who are really interested to improve your technical skills. I'm absolutely sure that you notice that in our hairdressing world, people work more visually with the shapes. They don't have any strong theory behind the work. So don't be that kind of stylist, don't be that kind of hair cutter. Make sure that you understand in your work 100%. Make sure you know what you're doing 100%. Make sure you're thinking when you're working on your shape. And this attitude will turn you into a real craftsman. So you will understand your profession as an expert. So once we finish our both sides, now we're moving on to the back. Taking section in the middle, making sure again working clean. Pulling our section on the base and cut it from short to long. So now you have to be very careful with your crown area, with the length you're creating. As you see, you're creating a brand new guide, so you don't really have any guide to follow. So you have to work quite visually with the length through the back. Make sure that the length through the back and the sides is similar. So you're not creating kind of bulkiness and heaviness through the back section. Make sure your length is exactly the same as through the side sections. You can maybe keep it a little bit longer through the crown area, but for the area on occipital bone, it have to be quite similar with the length through the sides. Then you will achieve that nice balance within the shape and nice proportions. And repeating exactly the same technique as you did on the sides now. You're taking your sections parallel to the previous, using again exactly the same other direction, which is back to the previous, and you're building your square shape. So you're working from the center and moving towards the corner. Remember, the corner we created when we worked our shape through the side. So we will stop exactly on the same point. To easier to understand expanded square shape in barbering, you can imagine like you're building a box around the round bone structure. So imagine that kind of round shape in the middle and the box around it. That's how your classic barbering square fundamental shape will look like in expanded shape. So maybe now you already visualize it a little bit better. And once again, why we're working in barbering with square shapes in general, because square shape making men look much more masculine, so it's much more suitable for male bone structure and for male appearance. Make sure that you're not rounding the shapes on the haircuts on men, otherwise you will make your man look very feminine, which we don't want. And pay attention one more time on your body position. Always have it in your mind. Your body position have to be right. You're standing right opposite the shape you're creating. So if you're working with square shape, you're standing behind the shape and you're not moving not onto the left, not onto the right. You're always on one place and pulling sections towards you. And again, our favorite cross-check technique to make sure that we actually build our shape right. Don't be disappointed if one side is longer than the other. Make sure you're just going back to your technique and repeat it again. Always remember that following this procedure makes your work much more professional and makes your shapes much more cleaner. If you will build a good habit going through that procedure, then you will be much more professional and your work will stand out much more. So through cross-checking technique, you can control your technique, you can control the way you work, so you can be your own teacher. In future, when you will understand fundamental shapes much more, then you don't have to go so thoroughly through your cross-check technique. Then your technique will become much more cleaner and much more stronger. Then you don't have to cross-check it as often. And now your outlines. First of all, make sure you controlling your outline with the comb. You're pressing the hair with the comb, and then with the small movements, like a pointing in movements, moving from the ear down to the end of the outline. It's very important to make sure what amount of weight you're leaving on the outline. Make sure your outline is not too heavy and not too fine. So you're working somewhere in between, making sure that it's just right enough of weight on the outline. And you assess it normally visually. So visually you can see how your outline reacts on the amount of weight you left. Now you have your guide behind the ear. You're taking this length as a guide and connecting your outline in front of the ear and your outline behind the ear. So it looks like one connected diagonal line. You're doing exactly the same on the other side. Again, pressing the hair with your comb or with your palm. It will give you more control. And put your diagonal line. Through the back, you're connecting your sides with the square shape of the outline. Again, it's extremely important where you place in the corners on your outline, through the back. Because if your corners will be far too close to each other, if your outline will be a little bit narrow, then the neck will look quite narrow, so it will create that visual illusion of narrow neck, and on men it doesn't look right. The neck on men have to look wide and masculine. And now we're moving on to our disconnection on the top. So at the moment I'm showing you the over direction through the fringe area. So I'm taking my first section through the left side of the fringe, through the wider side of the fringe, creating a guide. You can take a guide from the side, so you can create exactly the same length on your first section as a length for the side. And now you're using quite strong over direction, so you're over directing your next section to your first section on the fringe. So the reason why you're using this over direction, because you want to create a longer length through the end of the section. By creating that strong over direction, by creating a shorter length through the left side, you're making the hair move onto the right. So you're creating dynamic and movement on your shape with your over direction. The shorter hair will always push a longer hair and create dynamic. Remember that rule, it always works. And now you're starting your first triangular section. So you're standing opposite the right side. You're taking your guide from the side, taking horizontal sections. So connecting your first section with your guide from the side and creating your guide for the top. Cutting your square cutting angle. Taking next section parallel to the previous and using quite strong over direction. So now you're over directing your section back to your first section. You can see over direction on the video very well now. And using the same square cutting angle. So that strong over direction will make your triangular section move from the right to the left. So opposite way the fringe is moving. So with this particular technique, you're creating interlocking movement of your sections, which will give you a very interesting texture on the top, very interesting movement on the top. Now notice that my over direction become a little bit less, so I'm not pulling my sections to the first section, to the first guide section, but I'm pulling my last section already to the approximately third or fourth section. And make sure you cross-check the shape you created. So now you can see the expanded shape very well. So it goes from short to long. Don't be lazy, make sure you always cross-check your shape, especially in the beginning. Then you just started learning your technical way of cutting. You will see how dramatically your technique will improve if you will always control yourself, if you will always check your shape with the cross-check. And you will understand your expanded shape much better. Now on your second triangular, you will use over direction onto the opposite side. You want to interlock those two triangulars. So now you have to change your body position, go onto the other side, then use your guide from the side, take horizontal sections, connect your new section with your guide from the side, and use exactly the same technique as you used on your first triangular. Next horizontal sections, over direction back to your first section, and square cutting angle. And with third section, your over direction will become less and less, because you don't want your triangular section to be far too long through the end. So you have to use slightly less over direction to still create that from short to long movement, but not as heavy. You can see and you can study your over direction for those two triangular sections on the top on the diagram. I would recommend you to pause your video on the diagram and draw the diagram for yourself and try to study it thoroughly so you will understand and memorize it better. So then you will work with your client, you will be very confident with your over direction and you will know 100% what you're doing. So it's all about studying and memorizing. It's very important in our craft. Make sure you check your outlines one more time. It's just a last visual assessment. And the last is your fringe. You're over-directing all the sections onto the left side, making sure that you're creating dynamic onto the right. Elevate your section slightly to create a little bit of gradation on the outline. Remember that we're not using any brushes in barbering, and we're working only with fingers and hairdryer, or if you're working with short haircuts, you can even leave to dry hair naturally or tumble dry the hair and let your client go. Men don't like brushes, remember that. No brushes in barbering. Thank you very much for staying with me. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you learned something new today from this video and you will use this simple technique on your clients. Thank you.